Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for today's Silicon Valley Reads program, the conversation with Rachel Joyce, the author of The Music Shop. My name is Michelle Arnott, the Deputy Director of Public Services for San Jose Public Library, and our library is very proud to co-sponsor Silicon Valley Reads. Silicon Valley Reads began in 2003 as a traditional one book, one community program, just selected one book and invited all the residents to read. Since then, Silicon Valley Reads has evolved into an endeavor that reflects on themes relevant to our region and time, and choosing books which spark rich discussion and engagement. Today, events are offered all over Santa Clara County and now virtually for all groups and thousands of participants. This year's theme is connecting.
Welcome to Silicon Valley Reads. Started in 2003 as a one-book, one-community program, Silicon Valley Reads has grown to become a thriving community engagement initiative throughout Santa Clara County, including books and events for all ages. Presented by the Santa Clara County Office of Education, the Santa Clara County Library District, and the San Jose Public Library, Silicon Valley Reads gives our community new perspectives and understanding of important, relevant issues and encourages people to read, think, discuss, and engage. The theme for 2021 is connecting. We are adjusting to living our lives in a pandemic with more solitude than ever before. This year, we are focused on finding our commonalities and talking about the things that bring us comfort and joy. We've selected 10 books to encourage everyone to find the connections that are uniquely meaningful to them, whether through relationships, food, nature, art, music, animals, or books. We hope you enjoy today's presentation. Thank you for attending.
Before we meet Rachel Joyce, I'd like to introduce a very special member of San Jose Public Library, Oscar Hernandez. 3 years ago, Oscar formed the band Dewey Decibel and the Systems with several other San Jose Public Library members with the purpose of providing musical support to library programs and events. Its core members have a diverse background in classical, jazz, punk, rock, and R&B. Today, we'll hear music from Dewey Decibel and the Systems, inspired by songs from the Music Shop. Welcome, Oscar.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I know that there were some challenges because of COVID, especially with social distancing. How did you and the team overcome those?
Yeah, we selected songs mainly as a duet. Of course, we wanted to keep our distance 6 feet, and then we wanted to minimize the amount of band members. Normally there's 5 or 6 of us, but we did 2, and at the most we did 3. And so that's pretty much how we did it. There were some challenges, but it was good. It was fun, and we had fun recording it.
Is this the first project that you've done in support of a book?
Yes, it is the first project we've done in support of a book. Normally we do projects for events or programs that are library related. So, and those are live. So yeah, this is the first time we've done something for a book.
So I have to ask you, since we're talking about music today, is there an ultimate gig that you'd like to play besides being on Zoom for a library?
You know, the librarians have the American Library Association conference every year. Of course, COVID, we didn't have it last year, but it happens every year. And about every 3 to 5 years, I say it comes around to San Francisco as one of the hosting cities, like Philadelphia, Washington, DC, I believe are the other ones. But next time they come around, I'd like to submit as a proposal, like, hey, we like to perform live at the American Library Association. We can haul our gear all the way up there. It's not a problem. And just do that and hopefully inspire like other library systems to say, hey, we should get our own band started that can support our library programs and events.
I love that. I think that would be fantastic. Mm-hmm. So Oscar, I think you have a video to share with us today. And do you want to talk a little bit about the selections?
Sure. We selected, after reading the book, after you suggested the book to me and I read it, 3 songs popped out in my mind right away. First of all, it was Oh No, Not My Baby by Aretha Franklin because it's so prominent in the book. And then I've always loved Adagio for strings. And then for good measure, we decided let's throw in, so we have a good R&B one, let's throw in a classical piece, let's throw in a rock and roll song. And so we threw in Wild Thing. It's 3 chords, real simple to play. And we decided to do that one. We practiced it twice, and then on the 3rd time we recorded it.
That's awesome. Well, let's listen.
When my friends told me you had someone new, I didn't believe a single word was true. Told them all I had faith in you. I kept right on saying, oh no, not my baby. Oh no, not my sweet baby. You're not like all those other boys who play with hearts like they were toys. My mama told me when we read that there's truth somewhere and you should use your head. But I sure did listen to what she said. I kept right on saying, oh no, not my baby. Oh no, not my sweet baby. You're not like all those other guys who lead you on, tell you lies. No, not my baby.
This one's for Elsa Rockman. She's in the book. So here we go. Wild thing, you make my heart sing. You make everything moving. Come on, wild thing. Wild thing, I think I love you. But I wanna know for sure. Come on, hold me tight. I think I love you. Look out, here we go. Wild thing, you make my heart sing. You make everything grooving. Come on, wild
I think you move.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Oscar. And just so everybody knows that those members that we're playing represent about 8 of the libraries that we have in San Jose Public Library System. Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you.
Now, Rachel Joyce. Rachel Joyce is not only the author of The Music Shop, she has also written the international bestsellers, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, which was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Book Prize and longlisted for the Man Booker Prize. Perfect, The Love Song of Miss Queenie Hennessy, a collection of interlinked short stories as Snow Garden and Other Stories, and also her new novel, Miss Benson's Beetle, which is out now. Rachel has also written over 20 original afternoon plays and adaptations for classics for BBC Radio 4, including all of the Bronte novels. Rachel's books have been translated into 36 languages and 2 are in development for film. And in 2012, Rachel was awarded the Specsavers National Book Awards New Writer of the Year. Today, we'll be discussing Rachel's 2017 novel, The Music Shop. A review by The Guardian writes about the novel that Rachel Joyce has established a reputation for novels that celebrate the dignity and courage of ordinary people and the resilience of the human spirit. Here's a love story that's as much about the silences between words as what is said, the spaces between people that can be filled with mystery, confusion, and misunderstanding, as well as hope. Set in 1988, The Music Shop is in an unnamed English city, on a rundown street called Unity. Frank, the shop's owner, knows how to connect customers with music they need. He changes people's lives without him really changing much at all. Frank, his friends, his community on Unity Street have been plodding along despite some portents of change until one day a mysterious woman named Elsa Rockman arrives and nothing's quite the same. Now I welcome Rachel Joyce.
Hello.
Hi, Rachel.
Hello there.
Welcome. We're so happy you can join us today to talk about The Music Shop and your work.
Well, it's a pleasure. I loved listening to the music just now. I could have just happily sat here listening to that and watching.
So happy to hear that. So to start us off, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how the Music Shop came to be. And I'm really wondering, did the idea for the Music Shop, did it come from music itself, or did it come from the idea of the characters and maybe a place like the Music Shop?
For me, novels always come from a number of places and then you kind of pull them all together and you discover what you've got. But one of the places it started was something that happened to us years and years and years ago. My husband, we're both really into music. I was more into classical music and he was probably more into kind of pop and punk and things that I wasn't so much into. But anyway, we moved and Paul discovered he couldn't really sleep very well. And we went to a record shop, a kind of music shop in a kind of local town once. And Paul happened to mention, I don't know why, that he was having trouble sleeping. And the owner said, I think I've got just the thing for you. And played him this, it was a CD, in fact, played the CD. And Paul said, yeah, I think that will work. And then a number of other people, as it happened, also said, oh, we can't sleep either. So they also bought this CD and it did work. It made him sleep. And I don't know whether it was just because somebody had taken the care to find a piece of music and promised that they had the answer, whatever it was. Anyway, it kind of set us both thinking about, well, wouldn't it be amazing to write a book about a man who heals through music? Not least because it would be about community, which is something I'm really interested in and really love writing about. It would be about people who find themselves on the outside of things, which is another place I really love to go in my writing. But it would be an opportunity to celebrate music and as a non-musician, which I am, to try and find the words to explain the effect that music has on us and why I think it's so important and why I think it kind of goes beyond boundaries and barriers, you know. So it felt a very important book to write. And also I felt I hadn't written a love story, which is such a difficult genre. I thought, well, it's time I tackle that. So those were all the pots that were simmering as I set off to write it.
I think that that's fantastic because you're able to use those two vehicles, the romance side, and then of course the discussion of music with that to combine it. I think particularly the chapters where Frank's mother speaks, so Peg, who's a huge force of nature. How did you come about using Peg as a way to maybe educate about music, as opposed to maybe coming from Frank? What was the decision about that?
It took a long time to find Peg, and actually, as is the case with novels, you know, you have different versions of characters before you actually arrive at the one you're going to use. So Frank, for instance, started off as a very frail-looking man in my mind, and then I just kept thinking, this man is not going to survive all the stuff I'm going to throw at him. And the readers are just going to be too worried. And so this is the brilliant thing about writing a novel. You know, you leave it one night and you come back in the morning and he'd just grown into this enormous man. And I thought, oh no, now you're fine. Now you'll be all right. I can, you know, you can deal with what I'm going to ask you to deal with. But Peg was another character who really changed. So I had lots of different, I knew that it was a very important relationship, and I knew that he was, in a sense, the wounded healer is Frank's kind of role really within the book. So I was always trying to get it, what is the wound? And it seemed to me that he had as a mother, a kind of woman who would be brilliant to meet at a party, but not great to have as your mother. That she too is a very wounded woman, but her passion is music. And then it occurred to me that I didn't really want, because it's not nonfiction, it's a story. So, you know, you've got to have people wanting to turn the page. That's my duty as the writer, is to keep you hooked. So really for Frank or me to have long passages explaining the music felt that it was going to kind of trip everybody up. Whereas if those lessons were coming from Peg and they actually had an emotional journey, as well as kind of teaching the reader a little about the music, then it felt a good balance and a good way of doing that thing where you marry story and what I would call depth, you know, the texture.
Right. And the fact that you did this with Peg in short, you know, sort of intercalary chapters with these spurts that really gave this sense about Frank's childhood, about how he grew up, and then of course how that wound almost grew over time, and you can see those pieces like that.
Yes, that was the intention.
So, do you think that Frank's intuition with people, do you think that grew out of what he was missing with his mother, with Peg?
Yes, I feel that if you're a healer like Frank, it's because you know what pain is. You recognize those feelings, that those, I mean, they're not all in pain. I think some of them are outsiders. You know, there are people who are at a kind of moment of crisis. And Frank's gift is that like a librarian, he knows the book, you know, not the book, but the music that you need. And often people think they need the thing they've had before, you know, they kind of want to stay in the same space. And sometimes actually what they're doing is kind of feeding the pain. Whereas Frank's ability is to see, it's a bit like a homeopathic doctor, really, that you sometimes have to match the pain with the pain in order to kind of ride it out. So that Aretha Franklin song, for instance, he gives to somebody who only wants to listen to Chopin music. That's all he wants to listen to, but who has been really devastated in love, in that his wife has left him. I mean, after, on their wedding night. So he's a really lonely, broken, fragile man. And Frank kind of recognizes that in giving him Aretha Franklin, it's like sometimes, sometimes you need to hear a song that actually just really matches what you're feeling. It doesn't go, no, what you're feeling is nothing. It goes, yeah, this is really awful, but let's sing a really big song. That's what I love about that Aretha Franklin song, is it's so painful, but it's so strong.
Right. You're right. That people would miss out on so many wonderful things if they only stuck with what they knew. And so I think that hits straight to the point that you wouldn't have those experiences otherwise.
Yes, I mean, I do believe that, and of course, at the moment, it's even more challenging. But that in kind of moving beyond what we know, then of course that's the only way we're going to really experience empathy and connection. That we've so Frank kind of encouraging people to kind of cross genres with music, to be bold with their music, has a kind of broader message, I guess.
And then Frank, of course, has another side to him. He has the side that is completely committed to vinyl and not entertaining CDs, which was new in 1988, not doing that. And he holds on to that. His commitment is unwavering. So how do you think that other side of Frank, this need to hold on to something that's this physical vinyl, do you think it's a need for him to hold on to sound, or to hold on to some kind of other touchstone or tether, maybe to his past?
It was, I mean, when I was writing the book, I was really thinking about local indie shops, many of which were under threat. Really, really are now. But also thinking about vinyl. I mean, I very deliberately set the book in 1988 because it was the year that CD sales overtook vinyl. So it was the kind of, it was ringing the bell on vinyl. But Frank holds on to vinyl partly because he really responds to the beauty of vinyl, as I do. And I mean, I think he's completely right. CDs were, CDs, actually, he was right. They came and went. They didn't last. They weren't beautiful. And I think, he says in the book, we're human beings and we need beautiful things that we can touch and relate to. It was also me thinking about books versus Kindle, really, because when I first started being published as a writer, Kindle was on the rise and there was a lot of fear about what that was going to do to book sales. But I would say that books, Frank's passion for vinyl would be similar to a bookseller's or a librarian's, passion for the physical book. There's just, I know many people may be Kindle readers. Personally, I'm not, because I just need the thing. I need to kind of hold it and take it around with me and put pieces of paper in it and have a relationship with the thing. And I think that's what Frank's passion for vinyl is about. But also it's a man who is locked in, he tells everybody else to change, but as you said at the beginning, change is not the thing he wants to do. And that really is his journey.
And it's almost ritualistic in some respects too, with the vinyl and that act. It's not as easy as hey Siri, play the song for me. There is an intentionality to that, which I think is important.
I think it's really important. I think the rituals are extremely important, whatever they are. But I think, the pulling the record out of the sleeve and placing it on the record player, and having to take care of the record, or also just the journey that a record makes, and the fact that you have to get up halfway through, and it means that you're committing to the music, which is what Frank is asking people to do.
What do you think Frank would, if you've set now, what do you think Frank would think of all of this? The fact that we get to have music at our fingertips.
I don't think he'd like it. I don't think he'd like it. I think he'd still be there with vinyl. But the great thing is he'd have more success, because certainly at the time that the book came out originally, record shops were opening at the speed of something like, in the UK, it was something like one a week were opening. And it was young people who kind of didn't really realize that it had already been and gone. You know, that it was like they discovered this whole new way of listening to music, and it became super, super cool. I think, obviously it's more difficult now.
Right. But I think with things like a record store day, which happens, internationally, and the big push for that, special release on vinyl, I think it definitely has brought that to a new generation of listeners, which is important. So I think it's
Yes.
exciting. So you write that music goes beyond the boundaries of time and consciousness, just as it moves beyond the boundaries of nationality and language. Do you think music is unique in that, or do you see that as well with literature, film, or art?
I think music does go. I mean, I'm a big believer in literature and books, and those are my passion. But I think music can go, I could go anywhere and be, well, in another time and be in a crowd of people. Oh, wouldn't that be great? But, be in a crowd of people and listen to something and we would all respond. It would take no explaining. And I think that for me is the kind of thing that really gets me about music, is how communal it is. That it doesn't, it doesn't take knowing a language, or it just is. And it's sort of, in a way, words you have to slightly think about. They've got to slightly go through your brain or whatever it is, or your consciousness, but music just goes bang right in there. And I find that incredibly powerful and moving. It really moves me.
Well, I think in this time right now, one of the things that we're missing is that ability to gather and listen to music in a way that's collective and meaningful. There's a power in that, and that connecting with the person next to you that you're completely different from. You may never speak to or say anything to, but when you hear that music, it reverberates and connects us all.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea, I don't want to give it away for anybody who hasn't managed to read it, but the ending really meant a lot to me, because it was about a lot of people coming together to do something, and I feel again that is regardless of language. If in another time we could all stand together and sing, and it wouldn't matter where we came from. I mean, I've seen they made me cry at the beginning of lockdown, which is for us, almost a year ago now, where orchestras and choirs were coming together on Zoom to sing. It just blew me away. And it was right at the beginning of lockdown, so I think I was kind of grieving anyway. But it just really got me. Seeing people singing, it's so brave. It's so beautiful.
Absolutely. So that makes me think, for Frank, and again, not to give away any or anything, but there's a song that Frank just can't handle listening to. It's just not something that he is even willing to entertain. Is there a song that you have a hard time listening to, or something that evokes a feeling that's just too much, that you're really sparing with your time that you may spend with that song?
I can't think of anything that is so unbearable. I mean, actually, no, there is one song, and I actually can't quite remember what it was, but when my dad died, my mum wanted, it was a funeral march to be played, and that was so painful that I think I would struggle to listen to that again now. I mean, I think her idea was, like Frank's, that you meet it with something painful, but actually that it felt that there was no relief in this music. It was simply painful. Mm-hmm. And I would struggle to listen to that now.
Right. I think, for some of the characters, I think that it's interesting that you didn't explore that with each one of the characters, that we know that there's a piece with them, that they have this wound and this pain that goes through. And I appreciate that you were able to tell those stories in other ways besides just with the music. But we really got to see how this group of characters came together on this street. So And I love that you called the street unity, because they were, they were together and almost fighting against these forces, sort of seen and unseen, around that. On a little lighter note, I think people would love to know where you set the music shop. What is the magical city that this is supposed to be? And online, there are lots and lots of guesses.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by what I wanted it to be was the street, the place where the people know. So I didn't really want it to be, which is why I deliberately didn't name it. But obviously I did have somewhere in mind, because I really needed to picture it myself, and I needed to wander around it, and I needed to know it. So the place I set it was actually a place called Gloucester, which is, it's only about 15 miles from where I live, but it's it has parts of it that are incredibly beautiful. It's got an extraordinary cathedral, absolutely beautiful, and some, very, ancient Tudor buildings, but it's also incredibly poor. And people are, it's a very tough city to live in. It's a very violent city. It's not somewhere I would feel safe after dark, even. Well, that's an exaggeration. I probably would be all right, but I'd be a bit careful. And last time I was there, you see people who are really, really struggling. So that was the city I set it in. Partly as well because it's the kind of city in the UK that if I'm setting my book in Gloucester, people go, oh no, I'm not going to read that. I thought, that's why I've got to set it there then.
Did Gloucester, did that inform how you're going to develop the supporting characters and the richness of their personalities?
Well, I knew that they were people who were, were kind of a bit, not out on the luck, but who'd had quite tough lives, all of them. And that's why I loved the idea that there would be this street where actually they had, all for different reasons, found a sense of home.
Do you think that the despondency of what was happening around that street in 1988, how do you think that parallels today? Do you think that it's still just as front and center for a street like that in a place like Gloucester?
Yeah, well, certainly at the time I was writing this, so it came out in 2017, so I was writing it in 2015, 2016, and I'd been researching it for a long time before that, but the kind of informative bit where I was just really writing it and thinking it, dreaming it, and when I was eating it, just all the time thinking about it, was the whole kind of Brexit thing in the UK, which completely split and has, we're still a very split country, and we're in a bad way. But in writing the book, I felt very strongly that disassociating from Europe was a mistake. And so it was kind of my way. It felt about the only way I had to express my concern about us functioning as a small island. I feel it, it's unleashed kind of racism and all sorts of unpleasantness, backward ideas, and has kind of sometimes made it okay again for people to express them. And it really frightens me, it really alarms me. And it makes me, sad is the wrong word, but I know I'm not alone. There are a lot of people who feel the same. There are a lot of people who think it's great. That's why we're split. But at the time of writing, it was very, the decision, it was just kind of in the air.
I think it's powerful how you reflect that and what was happening, on that street in 1988 and what those characters were going through. And especially it's a gradual, almost dismantling of Unity Street, through that process. So yes. The character we haven't talked about is Elsa. Can you talk a little bit about Elsa Rockman and how you developed her?
Well, I knew that she was going to be the person that kind of unhooked Frank, that helped him back to kind of becoming a fuller person again. Because what he's doing is he's healing other people, but he's not thinking about himself. So I needed her to be somebody who would just kind of send him off kilter, really, which is what she does. But she too has a wound, something that she's running from. So they're both kind of, and so that they meet to talk about music, because in a way it's the safest thing for them both to do, given the things that are happening for both of them that they're both trying to run away from.
So I read that you used to be an actor, and I thought about that when I'm reading Elsa Rockman and how you portrayed her, because she doesn't speak a whole lot. When she does, her words are meaningful, but her actions really tell you about Elsa. How has you being an actor, how has that informed your writing and how you develop your characters?
I think for all of the books, I think having been an actor just means that you have, it's a kind of similar muscle, really. I mean, it's not the same muscle as writing, but I think you just naturally have an interest in working out what it's like to be people who aren't you, and kind of finding what you have in common and then making the leap into what you don't know. And I spend a lot of time before I really commit to the story itself, just trying to find out who the characters are. I'm really, really interested in character. I'm really interested in story. But for me, unless the characters have real depth, it's not going to hold me for the amount of time that it takes to write a book. So, I do whatever I need to do to find out, who these characters are. And it takes me a really, really long time to find them.
So we have quite a few questions that are coming in our Q&A, and I have just a couple more questions for you. What I'm wondering about now is, as we think about Frank and Elsa and the arc of their story, and you go back to music for a minute, is there a song that you think that would represent their relationship and that arc of that story that isn't in the book, or maybe is in the book?
Oh, I've never thought of something that actually isn't in the book. That's a difficult one. There's a Stephen Duffy song called "I Don't." No, it's not. It's now I'm getting everything confused. I might have to come back to you in a minute. There was a song when I was getting together with my husband. I said to him, because we were going to be apart for a long time, and I said to him, can you give me a song to play so I can just listen and think of it? And he gave me a Stephen Duffy song, and now I can't remember the name of it. So I'll have to just come back to you in a minute. It's a shame I can't just run out into the kitchen and ask him what it was. I've got it in my head, but I'm no way going to sing it.
Okay. Are there any songs then that you didn't include in the book and that you thought that you might want to? Would that be one of them?
Yeah, it would. I mean, there were so many songs because music is such a big part of our lives. There was so much music I did, and I started off with loads more. But in the end, as I said earlier, it's not nonfiction. It is fiction. It's got a duty to tell a story. So really, the music I used could only be there if it was actually in some way furthering your understanding of the characters or the story. If it had a purpose.
Right. That makes sense. I know that the playlist is on Spotify, and people are talking about the music in the chat too. So I know that when I was reading it took me on a musical journey, which is fantastic. So a lot of it's familiar and a lot of it is new. And I think that the combination between the story and the music that you presented really allows us to think things through as an active participant in the story and as the reader. So I think it's really special, Rachel.
Thank you. I've just remembered the song. It's called "You Are." It's "You Are." It's Stephen Duffy. It's a great song.
All right, maybe Justin can put that in the chat for us. So that would be great. So my last question for you before we get to the Q&A, what are you most looking forward to doing next, or what are you working on now?
Well, strangely, I mean, Miss Benson's Beetle has come out the end of last year, and just, did really well, which is great, especially during a pandemic. I mean, really, really exciting, because it's very odd publishing a novel when you can't talk to readers about it. You realize, I mean, I'm actually quite a quiet person. I like being in my space, but I have realized that not being able to talk to readers about a book means that you miss it's just like a whole life of the book, where you begin to sense what it means to people who read it. And you realize what a gift that is, that people give you back when they talk to you about what the book meant to them. And I realize how much I've missed that. But I found it hard to work in the begin with, because I found it such a confusing time and such a frightening time, and my children were all back at home and I was very worried about everyone. But one of the things I'm working on is the screenplay for The Music Shop. So it is in the long process of becoming a film.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is this your first screenplay that you're working on, or have you done one before?
No, actually, my first book, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, which we're hoping will be filmed this year in the UK.
Well, I know that all of your fans are so excited about the prospect. That would be just great.
Good.
So we have a couple questions now, if we've got some time to answer them or to talk. And the first question comes from Pam, and she wants to know, did you start with particular stories in mind, or did the story drive the selection of songs?
The story drove, in the end, the selection of songs. It had to. I mean, as I said before, I do really think about story and structure, but also just twists and turns. And even though I think that they must be earned by the story, you can't just slam in a twist or a turn for the sake of it. I think, certainly as a reader myself, I like guessing what's going on. I like trying to work things out. And so as a writer, it's important for me that those things are happening too. So as I said earlier, I had this kind of I just had this kind of, years of research into music and trying to learn how to write about music, which took me ages to find my way. But then I think there came a point where I went, I've just got to push aside all the research now, and I've got to commit to this, my book, whatever it is.
We have another question here. Question about the audiobook. Did you get to have a say in the narrator, who I believe was Richard Armitage, who did the audiobook?
It's Steve Hartley.
Stephen Hartley. Okay.
Yes, and I did, because he's a friend. He's a friend. And I don't always say that friends should do audiobooks, but I felt that he would be really good, because he's got such a gravelly, deep voice that sounds as if it's been absolutely, it sounds as if it's existed for centuries. So he felt completely the right person. And I think he had lots of fun with it.
Oh, that's great. I think I was confusing it was another book that I just listened to that was Richard Armitage. So sorry about that. Let's see. Another question here. Want to know, have you ever participated in a flash mob? And if so, if you did that inspire, what happens?
I have never, I've just so want to. I would love a flash mob in my life. But that's why I think one of the reasons I had to write one. I just think, what a joyful thing. What a generous thing. Wouldn't it be great after lockdown if you kind of walked into somewhere and there was a flash mob? How amazing would that be? I think as I said, I think it's just the generosity of a flash mob is the thing that really moves me.
Definitely. Another question here. There's a suggestion that you should initiate one after lockdown.
Yeah, the only thing is that what I have to say, especially, is that I know there are people who say everybody can sing, but I seriously can't sing. I seriously can't sing. So and normally I have to mime. So I suppose if I pretended that I was singing, it would be fine. But I think it would move me so much, I probably would be able to sing anyway in a flash mob. But I think it's a very good idea to try and initiate one in a silent way.
A couple other questions here. How many vinyl records do you own yourself?
Oh, we've got quite, I mean, both Paul and I, before we met, had huge vinyl collections, and then both went through that stage, as many people do, where they think, well, we're not going to, we don't even have record players anymore. So I kept so few. It really upsets me now to think about how much I let go. And Paul did the same. But we started recommitting to vinyl about 10 years ago. So now I'd say we've got about 150, 200.
Do you have a special
and I love
place?
it.
Did you listen?
Yes, we do. We have a really beautiful record player now. And I just love the whole ritual.
And at the end of the book, you include a section called Songs That Saved Me. And I noticed that a couple of them aren't necessarily included in the story. So the one by 10cc, which I know that you listened to when you were young. I thought that was really great about how you describe how you listen to those songs and what that does. So I'm sure for most readers, we all went through a mental list or a collection of the songs that have saved us and what that means. What was your decision to include those?
It was partly somebody asked me if I would think about doing that. And when you finish writing a book, you do go through a kind of period of feeling quite bereft, kind of grieving it really, because for a while there's a lot to be done. There's editing to be done, and there's looking at the covers, and there's kind of pushing it. And then suddenly there's a period where it hasn't come out yet, where there is absolutely nothing to be done. And yet it's almost as if you can't let go of it yet, because you haven't got any readers to take hold of it and look after it, so you're kind of holding on to a thing without actually being able to do anything. So the opportunity to write something a little extra was I really relished, because it meant I didn't have to let go for a little bit longer.
That's great. All right, we have here a question about Maud. So Maud is an interesting character that has a lot of layers. And the question here is, what made you have Maud progress into being, or maybe change into being a flower shop owner, as opposed to her previous life as a tattoo artist?
I think Maud, what I like about Maud is that she's a survivor. Much more than Frank or Elsa, really. She's tough. I'm moved by her because she loves Frank. She genuinely loves him, and recognize at the end that she can't have him. But I just really, I thought about all of the characters in that kind of huge gap that you have, at the kind of end of, the point where Ilsa and Frank lose one another, and then you have this huge gap. And it felt to me as if Maud would reinvent herself in that time. I know Kit does too, thank goodness. But Maud, I felt, probably would have moved on. And the idea came because, I don't know if you remember, but very early on in the book, Frank goes to visit her and she's got a little garden. And he just realizes that she's got this side that he just doesn't even credit her for having. He just kind of overlooks Maud. So it felt right to give her this kind of this other life. And also I think she's probably a brilliant businesswoman.
Right. So that leads me to the next question here. Do you write the story chronologically or in bits that later fit together?
I tend to try to write it chronologically, but don't succeed. So then I jump to bits that I know I want to write. But the danger is always that actually then, when you do put the whole book together, that actually those bits, you'll be wrenching it in a way it shouldn't go, and you might have to be prepared to let things go, even if you really love them, because when you sew it all together, it actually, you've got to be true to the, you've got to hold on to the integrity of the book, as opposed to what, you as a writer think, oh, this is a really good bit of writing here, or whatever it is. So I'm not somebody who can really write I certainly can't plan. I know people can, kind of write the structure and then they write the book. But for me, there's no surprise in doing that. And then there's no joy, really. But also it doesn't allow the book to kind of find its own life. If I kind of feel if you're deciding from the outside how it's going to be, then you're not really in it. So you're not going to be true to just the small things that happen that change moments. So that I'm basically answering with two different kind of contradictory answers there, which is feels about right to me in terms of writing, because you say one thing and then you do another.
Right. How do you then incorporate all of that research that you've done? Do you just sort of do you access it as far as we do memories and say, well, this is going to come up at this time, and this may fit in and be relevant here, or you go back and refer back to what you've done?
It's more to do, I think, with your confidence as a writer. So I knew I was writing a book, obviously, about a man who knew everything about music, and I didn't. So my first duty was to find out as much as I could, so that I, could be not on Frank's level, but close. And so that I could write a man who knows everything about music. But the trouble with lots of research is that, I think it comes to a point where you just have to go, right, okay, I don't want to write a book now, a kind of, huge tome that shows how clever I am and how much research I've done. So you've just got to shove it all to one side. And I still look at the notes I made for the book and realize how much I didn't use or I forgot. But it was just all part of the process of being confident enough as a writer to write Frank.
So that leads us to our last question, and it's related to this. Are all the stories about the musicians Peg relayed to Frank true, and with all the research that you did?
Well, as far as my knowledge, yes. Probably somebody's going to turn around and say, no, they're not. But yeah, I did masses of research. So I didn't include anything that I hadn't got a strong base for. But obviously, lots of stories are also, passed on stories, like Peg's stories about Miles Davis. Obviously, I couldn't speak to Miles Davis. So, the handed down stories that I picked up, just squirreling away through, I don't know, memoirs, journals, all sorts of things. But I found stories that I thought, oh, that makes that person come alive for me. I've got a way into the composer or the musician or, whoever it is, that's such a quirky little story that I feel I understand the music in a way I didn't before.
And especially since some of the stories that you included, were about love and about, desperation, which I think just adds to the gravity or the music itself and what Peg was exposing Frank to listen to.
Yeah. She tells him, early on, she says, music is a journey. And she said, it's like falling in love. No one gets hurt. And that's the lesson he's given, that's the life lesson he's given as a child. Love is dangerous. And then he's led to believe, I think, as a child and as a young man, that he's not worthy of love, which I think is just about the worst thing you can be given as a child to hold. So the journey that he makes is actually it's a really, really difficult one. And also, I think often if you're in a place of pain, it can almost be easier to stay, in that place of pain than try and make that journey out, because you're going to have to deal with what you don't know. And it might take you to places on the way that feel even darker and more dangerous.
And it looks like I have one more question here. Last one is, what was the CD that helped your husband sleep?
That is in the book. It's called Beata Viscera by Perotan, and it's a single voice. I mean, it's the most beautiful. It's a brilliant choice to give somebody who can't sleep, because it's so beautiful. It's got such promise, and you hear the human voice, behaving like a bird. And I think it makes you just realize how, well, it's a great thing to realize how beautiful and resilient and brave human beings are capable of being. And I think not being able to sleep is often to do with anxiety. So being given that song is a gift.
Well, hopefully this will be one thing that everyone's going to get to have access to, and try this out tonight. With a lot of comments about that. I think we all can use some comfort there. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing about the music shop and sharing about your writing process and your inspiration in your craft. Really, really, really grateful for you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So everybody, thank you for joining us today. We will be ending our program with one last performance, which is the Adagio for strings, performed by the two members of the Dewey Decibels. And if you haven't had a chance to read the music shop yet, please buy it now or go to the library, check it out. Remember that we have also more events from Silicon Valley Reads that are coming up, including some more author visits. And you can find more information at siliconvalleyreads.org/events. And thank you again for joining us.